So, welcome to painting a pansy today, and what we're going to start with is two simple shapes. And I cut these out on my Cricut machine, but it wouldn't be a big deal if you wanted to cut out 3 petals, make sure it's connected in the middle. And the great thing about this idea is when it's all through, you can bend the petals up to create this 3D look. But for now, let's keep it flat and choose what kind of pansy we're going to do. Now there's all kinds of pansies. I printed this out and printed this one out. And as you can see, there's lots of varieties. So we're gonna do maybe 2 different kinds just to get started. And I think what I'll do is the most typical pansy is in the purples. So let's just go ahead and just wet the entire piece. And I've got a piece of paper underneath because I am purposely going to have to get out of the lines. So it's better than to get it all over a table to just have it on paper. So I've got it pretty wet. And now I'm probably gonna just look at my palette and decide what kind of purple I wanna do. Do I want it to be like a blue purple or just a rich, warm purple? So I'm gonna just go for this purple right here and get that pretty activated here. Nice. Okay, so while it's wet, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the whole thing. This is pretty easy. Just fill it up. Try to get the edges if you can. Go do the other one. And while it is very wet, I'll make sure I get all of this. I like to get the edges so that they're not white. So you kind of have to paint around like this, because when I go to flip it up, I don't want to see a lot of white. Now, as you can see, a lot of the paint is falling to the edges, which actually works for us on this idea. I kind of like that. So now what I'm going to do is take my purple, and I want it even darker. So I'm going to put it over here and put some of this dark navy blue color. And as you can see, if I put a blotch of it here, it's very dark. So I want it to have less water and more paint. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit it in the center. This is the one that's going to show. This one's in the back. So I'm not so worried about that, but I'm going to go ahead and do it too. It already looks like a pansy, doesn't it? Now I'm going to take this dark color and go all the way around the edges. While it's wet, it will blend in with the lighter purple. Doesn't have to be perfect because wet on wet tends to just sort of flow. All right, so I'm going to let this dry and move on to the next step. Okay, so the next one I'd like to try, that's pretty typical when you see a pansy, are these yellow ones with the purple middle. So I am going to start off with yellow. I have this set that is brighter colors, and I really want that yellow to be super bright. So same thing, I'm going to wet the pansies, or the petals, I should say. They're not pansies yet. And just kind of saturate it. And usually in watercolors, there is a bumpy side and a smooth side. So you want to make sure that the side you're painting on is bumpier than the other side. And I've just noticed that this is my bumpy side and this one was right. So I'm gonna just turn it around and wet that side. Actually, what's kind of cool is if you don't want it to bubble or make that little hump that it makes when it gets wet, you just wet both sides. So that's what I'm gonna do, just so that it stays flat while I'm working on it. And again, I've got a new piece of paper so that I can just get out of the lines. So let's see, which side is the bumpy side? I forgot. Okay. Yeah, this is the bumpy side and this is the bumpy side. So you kind of have to determine that yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it with yellow. Now the purple and the yellow are complement colors, which means if you mix purple and yellow together, you're going to get a very muddy, kind of a brown color. So with this one, I am not going to put the purple on top of the yellow and let it bleed. So this is one that I would probably just let it dry. But what I want to do with this one is take let's see, I'm going to take the yellow that I used and I'm going to put a little tiny bit of orange in it just to make it more of a kind of a tangerine color. And while it's wet, I'm going to just hit it along the edges just to give it a little bit of dimension. And then I'm going to let this dry before I put the purple on it. As you can see, I'm just dabbing it on. We will let the watered paint do its thing as it dries. It just blends and bleeds into the other color. So you can see I'm just dabbing it. That's all I'm doing. All right, so this is a good place to stop and let this dry and go back and work on another one. Okay, so just for fun, we're gonna do one more just to show you how two colors that blend together, it looks so pretty. So I'm gonna go ahead and wet this down again. Get it nice and saturated. But this time I think I wanna go with something more on the rose colored side. So I'm going for this really pretty pink. And I'm going to go ahead and cover everything with it. Got to have some pink in this mix, right? So just go ahead and saturate it. This is so easy, right? But in the end, you're just going to love how pretty it comes out. Okay, so if I pick a shade of orchid purple or maybe something on the red side, it's going to blend in really nice with this because they're kind of next to each other on the color wheel. So I'm thinking, let's see, maybe let's just do something on the purpley side. On this little set, I have this really pretty orchid color here. So let's just try this and see how we like it. I can always add more purple to it, which I probably will. So I'm going to go ahead and dab that in the center. Remember how on the purple one we did this? Just let it blend into what's already there. You really have to work on wet. If you don't, you don't get that effect. So do make sure that your flower or your petals are nice and wet, and you can already see how it's just sort of fading into that first pink color that I did. And now, while it's wet, I'm going to go ahead to a dark purple color and hit that in the center. This is super dark. But again, they don't fight each other because they're next to each other on the color wheel. So I'll just dab that, not too much, and let that bleed into the second color. And I think I'll go back to the second color that I used, which is right here, and dab that on the edges. You don't have to, there's not a trick to this, you're just dabbing it on. And that just gives a little bit of dimension to our petals. Again, we have to work with wet on wet. If your petals are drying, wet them again, and you won't have that problem. All right, and I can see, if you look closely, you can see where it's bleeding right here. It's so pretty, so pretty. Want to make sure I get the sides. I can always go back and do those later, but it's nice if I could do it this time around too. Okay, so we're going to go back to the first one that we did. And let this dry. Okay, so let's do our background right now, and I usually like to work with like a 6x9 sheet, but you can do 8x10 or 5x7, whatever you want. So I think what I'm going to do, just so it doesn't bubble while I wet it, is I'm going to wet both sides. So you're going to take your your water, and just go ahead and wet both sides completely. And that way it won't bubble while we are applying color to it. So I'm going to flip it over and apply the water on the other side. Let that soak in. Remember, we do want to paint on the bumpy side. There's a smoother side and a bumpy side. Okay, so now I've got this completely wet. It's wet on the back too. It's just a little trick I like to use in order for it to not move while I'm painting it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick just a nice sappy green. This one will work. And this is a quick process, just kind of like we did the pansies. We're just going to hit it and let the water paint just blend right in. And I'm kind of just flicking it on, giving it a leaf shape. Be generous now, don't be timid with this. They can touch each other and cross over each other. And I definitely want to have some sunlight coming through. So this is where I will grab this other little paint set because it has a very bright yellow in it. And I'm going to go ahead and get this yellow color here. It's pretty small, so I'm gotta make sure my brush stays in that and not over to the red. And now I'm just going to flick it in a few places, excuse me, and same thing, just sort of a leafy stroke. And that kind of gives me the illusion of sunlight coming through. And now I'm going to take a third green. Now this is up to you. I kind of like to have three. Three is an odd number, always works for me. So I think I'm going to take this green here, which is more of a true phthalo-y green, and hit it in a few places. And this just gives variety of shades blending into each other. And this is just more of a playful kind of a feel. You can do any kind of background you want. If you want to do just maybe shades of different colors you can. I've had lots of my students experiment with that idea, but I just kind of like having this very leafy, kind of a flowy bush behind all of my pansies. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to go back to the sap green, the original color, and hit it again. You can see I'm just dabbing it on. My brush is almost giving the leaf effect on its own because it has a point and it gets thicker as it gets down to the bottom. And I can still see a little yellow. That's good. So I'm going to stop here, let this dry, because all of my flowers will go in front of it. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this purple one, and sometimes it's best just to let it dry so you can get some rich colors happening. So as you can see, it has dried a little bit lighter than when I started. So I'm going to go ahead, and one of the things I'd like to do is brighten up my purple, and one of the ways I can do that is by adding maybe a pink over it. I love layering colors. So I'm going to go ahead and water this down, this pinky purple color, and I'm going to go ahead and wet the whole thing. And as you can see, look what happened. It just really gave it a nice, warmer grape shade. And I'm just going to go through the process all over again. You can definitely layer watercolor paint. Sometimes it's kind of hard to hold these little petals down. So just do your best. Come out here. And I'm going to go ahead and do strokes that come out like this, just so I can see those little lines that you get when you're looking at a pansy. You see those, they're like little, oh here, I'll show you on the picture, like this right here, these little lines. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same on this one, just to give it that motion. And now I think I'm going to go back to that dark, dark purple, which was like a navy blue color that I have here. It's like a dark blue. Add a little of my grape color to it. And I'm going to dab it in the center again, get it really nice and dark. Let that blend. This one is really going to be pretty when it's done. And I might just go ahead and take that color and hit the edges again. Remember, if it's not wet, it won't bleed. You'll just get, you'll get lovely paint strokes, but it won't bleed into it. This is also a good time, if you want to accentuate those little lines, is just go ahead and give it a few brush strokes like this. This one is already doing what I want it to do. And that should take care of it. You're going to want to repeat this on all of them. So when I go to do this one, I'm probably just going to leave this alone. In fact, I can just do it right now because I have purple paint on. And I'm just going to lightly give it a few little brush strokes that go in the direction, starting from the center, come out like that. So, and this one I'm going to darken it up a little bit in the middle. I kind of just look at each one and decide what does it need. Same thing here. Just going to go ahead and give it those little fun lines. And those are done. So as far as the purple and yellow one goes, I will show you real quick on what I would do with those. See if they're dry. A lot of times I am very impatient and I don't let it dry completely. But for this one, I don't want it to bleed into the yellow because, like I said, if you blend yellow and purple together because they're complement colors, it will just turn out like a brown. So I kind of want to stay away from that. So I'm going to go ahead and let me push this up. And I'm just going to hand paint purple on there. So I'll just pick one of these lovely purple tones. I've got a couple right here, and here, and I might even mix those two. So I get kind of a warmer purple. And with this one, I'm just going to apply it on. And go ahead and do those lines just like this. So this one's not bleeding into it. And that's really all there is to this one. I could put maybe some of that darker purple, which in the center, which is really pretty. But this one is just different than the others. So let me go ahead and finish this one up. You don't have to be a super great artist to do this. It's just a matter of a few strokes here and a loose brush. You just don't want to press down hard. You're pressing down lightly. This one won't show as much because it's behind this one. They're stacked on top of each other, but I still like to do it anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that process. So as you can see, once this one is on top, you'll just see little bits from behind. So I might even want to go out a little longer with these, just so they really show up when I stack them on top of each other. And we're going to go over a few of these strokes in a minute, or I'll show them in the beginning of this video, I think. But that's about it. And then when I go to stack that, you'll see it behind it, which is kind of cool. So these are ready to completely dry. And oops, I forgot to put the dark part in here. Not that it will even show, but I just like to do it. Let these dry so that I can glue them down and then make the petals come up. Let's go over a simple leaf watercolor lesson. And what I like to do is just first activate my paint. I like working with a round brush, but I'm going to show you how to do it with both brushes. So every round brush has a point, and that serves as the very point of the leaf. So you just press and drag and lift. Press, drag, and lift. You can make a leaf where you do it in two sections, like this, and leave that white if you want to. Either way, you want to use that point, and lifting makes the other point, so that when you get done, you have a lovely point at the top and the bottom. It does take some practice, but if you keep doing it on scrap watercolor paper, you will get better. If you want to use a flat edge brush, you can. You're going to use the chiseled part of your brush and lift and lift. So it's the same idea. You're pressing and lifting, but with a flat edge like this, it's a little bit trickier. So I start at an angle and press down and lift, and then press down and lift. And you can get lovely leaves like that. The one advantage of having this one is you can give it some little spikes like this going all the way down just by using the side of your brush, scratching that on. So then I would just turn it around so it's more comfortable and do this side. There you have lovely leaves. Now the very last thing that you can do, you could leave your background very soft and muted like this. As you can see, it's very soft and everything, it just sort of fades into each other. Or you can add a little bit more detail, which I'm going to go ahead and show you right now. I'm going to go back to that sap green. You can use any green you want. I mean, to me, green leaves can come in so many different shades. Okay, so, and just like in the leaf lesson that I taught you in the beginning, you're going to start with a point, press down and lift, press down and lift. Now, what we're trying to do right now is just give some leaves that are in the front. And my paper is not wet anymore, which means it's not going to bleed. So I'm just doing this in a few places. Try to think of a natural flow of what your leaves are doing. And as you can see, I'm not going over it and over it and over it. I just press, lift, and that's it. However it turns out, it turns out. If you work it too much, it just starts to look messy. So I'm just going to go ahead and have some fun putting some leaves here and there. And leaves seem to be the tricky thing with a lot of people. They make them super small like this, which is fine. But when you're working with a big painting, a big paper like this, it could take you a long time to fill it up. So I just go ahead and do nice big leaves. And now the ones that I originally did in the beginning are softly fading away and becoming part of a background. Sometimes it's good to just let them overlap each other too, just like that one. I don't want them to, not touch. That doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna just hit this one more time just because it was fading away. So as you can see, I'm just having fun doing leaves and everything in the background is just sort of fading away. So this is a good place to stop. We'll go ahead and let this dry, and when this dries, everything will be ready to be glued down and you are done. I just want to show you some backgrounds that I've done. So this one, I didn't do the detailed leaves, but I did do a variation of different greens. And this one is just blobs of color to give it the flowery effect. So when I put my pansy down, it sort of matches. And I did put some glitter on this one, but it sort of matches my background. So I thought that was kind of cool. This one is just muted colors. Here's one that's all different kinds of colors. So if you want it to look like a bouquet of flowers behind your flowers, you can do that. This one just has more detailed leaves and I put some color behind it. So as I put my flowers down, you just see some of these leaves and these other colors poking through. And then this one is just super muted. So this just kind of shows you all the different backgrounds that you can do and experiment with. So, and that's the fun of watercolor, is that it can be fuzzy and, just sort of obscure like this, or it can be a little bit more detailed. So we're going to take our flowers and glue them on so that it's like this. See how there's a line, or separation right here? Well, we want to take this and place it on top so that we're covering that up, so that when we glue it down, we're going to lift these petals up like this, and that way we have like something that's kind of 3D. Now, as you can see, I have some white here. So what I can do later, or even before I move on, is hand paint the sides if that bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, then it's okay. Just leave it the way it is. So here's the dark purple one. So we'll put that there. I kind of want to know where everything's going. And then the yellow one, of course, would go, place that where it goes, and then kind of put it there. And as far as the middle goes, I'll show you some ideas of what you can do. I always like to just hit it with a little bit of gold, just so that it kind of sparkles a little. As you see in this photograph, there's little yellow dots. So sometimes I use puff paint, which I highly recommend, is really fun. And the ones that I have over here, I actually used puff paint, but then I put some glitter on it too. So that's basically the whole lesson. You can cluster them together and put a whole bunch of them on there, or just, separate them, write a little note right here if you want, or scripture, or something meaningful for you. And yeah, that's about it. You just place them on there, and there's our pansies and our beautiful background.